The Los Angeles Rams jump out to 1-0 in the 2021 NFL season with a dominating victory over the Chicago Bears by a score of 34-14 in week 1. And we're going to discuss more of what happened in this game in this episode. So make sure to tune in to this episode of the Locked On Rams podcast.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rams Nation, what is going on? As always, it is your boy, your host, Sosa Kremenjas. I'm a fantasy analyst at PFF and your host here at the Locked On Rams podcast, your number one daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Rams and part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And just before we dive into this episode, it's obviously going to be a week one recap between the Los Angeles Rams and the Chicago Bears. Sunday Night Football, a dominant victory for the Rams by a score of 34-14. I wanted to tell you guys that you can go look for a Sunday pregame show that talks about every game and every team in depth. All you have to do is check out the Locked On NFL Sunday show live every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. It hosts two of our favorite hosts on this network. My guy, Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast, as well as my other guy, Cody Rourke, host of the Locked On Broncos podcast. These guys do it the best in the game. I hopped on the show for today's game, Sunday morning, of course. So make sure you guys check that out. Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern. They're going to get you prepared for every single game, every single week, everything you need to look out for. Now it's time for us to dive into this game one recap between the Rams and the Bears. And we're going to cover everything you guys need to know in this contest, of course. Looking at the offensive side of the ball, the defense, the special teams, the coaching performance, and of course, we have to begin with the quarterback performance, the Matthew Stafford era. His first game with the team in Los Angeles. And by the way, he was rocking a slick white sleeve on his right arm. I called it the staff sleeve. Man, the guy looked clean, and boy, did he play well. Let me tell you, this was one of the best performances I've seen from a quarterback on the Los Angeles Rams in a long time. I mean, it was the exact opposite of what we've become accustomed to from Jared Goff, at least over the last two seasons. You look at Stafford's stat line, 20 for 26, 321 yards, 12.3 yards per attempt, and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, with a quarterback rating of 156.1. A perfect rating is 158.3. He was nearly there. That's how dominant he was in this game. You look at the long touchdowns. He had a 56-yard touchdown to Cooper Kupp, and I want to say a 69-yard touchdown to Van Jefferson. It might have been 70 yards. He's the first quarterback since 1968 to have two 50-plus yard touchdowns in his first game as the quarterback for a new team. He had as many 50-plus yard touchdowns in this game as the Rams had all of last season. If that doesn't explain to you how great this guy was in his debut, how special of a performance it was, I'm not really sure what else to tell you. I mean, Stafford was absolutely incredible. It was so exciting, and it was just a breath of fresh air because we talked about it all offseason. This guy is going to bring a new element of explosiveness to this offense that we have not seen since 2018, and that's exactly what he did. I mean, you look at the very first drive, he comes from under center, runs a play-action boot, throws it deep to Van Jefferson, 69-yard touchdown right out of the gate. This guy is just built different. I'm not really sure how else to explain it. There is a legitimate possibility that he's not going to just lead the league in passing yards. He might win the MVP award. I get it. It's 1 week, relax, take it easy. But I want to preface this also by saying this is the first live snaps every single player on the offense has taken because none of these guys played throughout the preseason. They have not played together. This is basically, a scrimmage between these guys because they have no chemistry whatsoever with a new quarterback. And this is the kind of performance that they come out and provide to us. I mean, there's not really enough good things you could say about it. I thought it was just an incredible performance from Stafford. So poised. You look at the last touchdown to Robert Woods in the red zone there. I want to say around the 5 or 6 yard line. He's going through 2 or 3 reads in a condensed area of the field like that. Steps up in the pocket, double clutches, triple clutches, still throws a dart to Robert Woods in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. I mean, no offense to Jared Goff, but that is the kind of stuff that Goff does not bring to the table and has never been able to do. And Stafford, in his very first game, is showing that kind of improvisation and ability to extend plays. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. The one area that you might talk about the Rams maybe lacking a little bit, the rushing attack did not look great for the majority of this game. The fourth quarter, a different story because Darrell Henderson ended the game with 16 attempts for 70 yards and a touchdown. But prior to that, the first 3.5 quarters even, the Rams looked terrible running the ball. I mean, they ran the ball maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times, like hardly at all. They had like 20 yards rushing, and they just could not get anything going. The offensive line was getting bullied repeatedly. And then the fourth quarter came around, and everything just suddenly took a big turn, a complete 180, and they just were gashing the Bears on the ground. I guess maybe the Bears defense started to get gassed a little bit. The offensive line started to block better. And one of the things that I noticed that the Rams haven't done much in the past few years was running out of shotgun, which they did a lot in this game. And of course, we knew that that was probably going to happen with Matthew Stafford as the quarterback. Now, this is a guy who likes to play in the gun. And it was different to see, man. It was weird. But at the same time, the Rams were productive. So obviously a cool thing to see. And then you move into the receiver room, the tight end room, the receiving aspect of this game. Another great performance. I mean, Cooper Kupp leading the way, 10 targets, 7 receptions, 108 yards, touchdown. Van Jefferson, 2 receptions, 80 yards and a touchdown. Darrell Henderson, 1 for 17, not bad. Robert Woods, 3 receptions, 27 yards, a touchdown as well. And Tyler Higbee, 5 receptions, 68 yards. All guys played tremendous in this game. The last one, Deshaun Jackson, 2 receptions, 21 yards. Was not used very often in this game, but just such a great performance from these weapons. And I think this is pretty much what we expected from the Rams, right? No one player truly dominating, the ball basically being spread all the way around. You know, they have a litany of weapons in this offense now, guys that are good at various types of roles. I mean, there's really nobody that's lacking on this team. And you look at the Chicago Bears defense, this is not exactly a cakewalk, you know, cupcake type of unit. These guys have some ability. I mean, this is one of the best defenses over the past 3-4 seasons in the NFL. And the Rams put up a 34 burger in the first game, pretty much with almost no resistance. I mean, there was maybe a quarter or two there where, you know, the Rams just couldn't really get anything going offensively and their drives were stalling a little bit and they couldn't really extend their plays and their drives. But outside of that, I mean, there's really not much to complain about here. You want to see the offensive line maybe just be a little bit more sound in pass protection, try to open up a few more holes in the running game. Maybe Sean McVay not get away from that running game as much going into the next few games. But this might just have been the game plan for this first contest. It might have been the most susceptible part of the Bears, which I don't disagree. Their cornerbacks are absolute unknowns, and it worked to perfection. I mean, Matthew Stafford, this new era for the Rams, you talk about a good start. There is no better way to start a season. And of course, that is not the only thing we're going to discuss. We're going to dive into the defensive side of the ball in just a second. You guys can find us on Twitter, of course, at QB's MEP and at Locked On Rams, and on YouTube at Locked On Rams as well. And it's not too late. You guys can go check out with this football season back now, a better way to create your custom pools at runyourpool.com. It is the premier sports pool hosting service. Run Your Pool makes it ridiculously easy to run a pool with your friends, family, or office mates. You guys can do anything you want there, from pick'em to squares, margin, confidence pools, 33 and more. And of course, we at the Locked On Rams podcast have our own Survivor contest, which is now going to be interesting to see who dropped out after week 1, of course. You guys can check them out today and get $10 off at runyourpool.com/lockedon, or use our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. Anywhere, everywhere in the world, Run Your Pool helps friends and colleagues compete. The NFL season is officially back. Start today at runyourpool.com/lockedon and have your pool up and running in minutes. Runyourpool.com/lockedon. Now we could dive into the defensive side of the ball and transition away from the offense, because these guys were tremendous. There's really not that much to discuss. You look at the defensive side of the ball, it all starts up front, right? And the Rams kind of got gashed when it came to the ground game, but I think that's really how they wanted to attack this Bears defense. You look at their rushing attack. David Montgomery led the way, 16 carries for 108 rushing yards, an average of 6.8 yards per carry, which is obviously not how much you want to give up. But then you look at their passing game, and of course, we've seen Andy Dalton and a little bit of Justin Fields as well. Dalton, only 206 passing yards, 5.4 yards per average. Justin Fields, 10 yards, 5 average as well. This is clearly how the Rams wanted to attack the offense, by allowing them to run, basically forcing or daring them to run, playing very, very deep in terms of the passing game, keeping everything in front, and just letting the Bears try to dink and dunk their way up the field while trying to make good tackles and not really allow them to create yardage after the catch, and definitely no explosive plays. So that's kind of a theme that not really looks any different from last year. That was exactly what Brandon Staley did with this defense, keep everything in front and limit any and every single explosive play possible. And that's exactly what they did again with Raheem Morris in this first game as his defensive coordinator, of course. And it turned out pretty well. I mean, of course, there were a few drives that were maybe a little bit frustrating because the Bears would have the ball, for 6, 7, upwards of 9 minutes even. But the Rams didn't really break on any of these possessions. I mean, they did a very good job at keeping everything in front. There was no big plays. Everything was 6, 7, 9-yard gains, that type of stuff. The Rams also had 3 stops on 4th downs in this game, 2 of which were 4th and 4s or 4th and 5s, one of which was a 4th and 15. And of course, they also had a couple of turnovers as well. You look at a guy like Aaron Donald, secures 1 sack in this game, could have easily had 3 or 4. I don't know how he couldn't grip Andy Dalton. Dalton kept squirming away from him. Just kind of unfortunate and unlucky. But man, the guy was great in this game. You look at one of the surprise players in this contest, edge rusher Justin Hollins, who was absolutely fantastic. I can't even begin to explain to you how dominant this guy was in this game. 8 tackles, 2 sacks, and a tackle for loss, and 1 forced fumble, which I believe came on a 4th down. He actually hit it with his helmet on a sack fumble, a pass rush. Man, he looked so good. And if the Rams can get these types of performances out of a guy like Hollins, you really can't underestimate how good this defense is going to be, because we've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast. Edge rusher was one of the positions that we circled that could be an issue for the Rams on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, we know Leonard Floyd is going to be the top guy there, but outside of him, what did they have at this position? And behind Justin Hollins specifically, there was a lot of injury concerns with the other guys, the Obo Okoronkwo, who's on short-term IR, Terrell Lewis, the knee issues, Chris Garrett on the COVID reserve 19 list. You look at Justin Hollins, he steps up in a huge way. The guy was amazing in this game. I mean, you can't really ask for anything better than that, in my opinion. You move back to the second level of the ball, maybe not that great of a performance. I think Troy Reeder had a decent performance. He had a nice tackle for loss on one occasion where he pushed the running back. I think it was on a running play, maybe a screen. I can't really remember. It was like a 5-yard loss by Troy Reeder. Very active play there. And I thought Kenny Young was very, very active in this game. You see that speed. And the Rams went to these looks that Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic talks about a lot. These 5-1 formations where they have 5 guys on the line of scrimmage and only 1 linebacker. And they did that a lot in this game. And Kenny Young is the one guy that does remain on the field in those sets. And I thought he was pretty good in this game. I mean, he clearly has a lot of speed. He's consistently around the ball. He can play sideline to sideline. He's very physical, likes to tackle. Of course, there was no splash plays per se, but, I thought he had a very solid contest, and you couldn't really ask for much more out of these guys. Maybe a little bit more sound in the running game, but at the end of the day, the running game is always going to be a numbers game, and the Rams probably just played a little bit lighter by way of game plan and scheme in this one, so can't really complain those guys for not having a ton of run stop. Then we move into the last part of the defense here, the secondary unit, of course. And again, there was a lot of activity here. Jordan Fuller leads the way with 11 tackles in this game. Taylor Rapp with 10. Kenny Young had 10 himself. Jalen Ramsey with 9 tackles and 2 tackles for loss in this game. And of course, David Long Jr., the one player that did reel in an interception for this team. He looked awesome in this game. I mean, there was a lot of activity. And for the record, Kenny Young did tip that pass that went to David Long Jr. for that interception. So kind of forgot to give him his love on that one. A great play individually by both guys. And the Bears were in the red zone at that point in time. So that actually took points off the board. Can't really underestimate that play and that sequence there. But that secondary was great. I mean, you look at these guys. David Long Jr. maybe gave up a little bit in terms of cushions and a few yards, but I thought he looked solid in this game. Clearly a very good tackler, and he looked comfortable. I mean, this was a guy that they had playing inside and outside. Jalen Ramsey, of course, the guy is just special. I mean, I talked about it on Twitter. He is different. I mean, the guy moves differently. He plays at a different speed. He's so physical. You look at some of these plays, the screen pass that he sniffs out on his own. He goes through a blocker and takes out that receiver for a tackle for loss while he's getting blocked. I mean, it's ridiculous to see the plays that this guy makes. He is so, so good. And there is not another corner in football that is as close to as good as this guy is. I just do not care. He is in his own tier. He is special. And he was getting targeted a lot in this game, especially early in this contest. I don't know if that was something that the Bears wanted to do. I'm not sure why that's something you would ever want to do. I mean, this guy is pretty damn good at football. And he responded to the task with a huge performance. I mean, he nearly had 10 tackles at halftime. This guy was active as hell. Such a good performance. You look at David Long, like I mentioned, he did get banged up at one point in the game. I believe it was a very minor injury, just a cramp issue that kind of took him off the field for a little bit. Robert Rochelle, the rookie, comes in, and he actually broke up a pass on 4th and 15 to get the team off the field, which was really cool to see. And Darius Williams, not that active of a game, probably not his best game either. Gave these guys a lot of cushion in terms of the receivers, probably by scheme again. So not his best performance, but not really much expected or required out of him anyways. The Bears clearly made it a point to attack Jalen Ramsey, and Ramsey made it a point to let them know about who he is as a player, because that dude was balling all over the field. And then the safety position, nothing too crazy out of these guys, but very active again. Jordan Fuller, 11 tackles. Taylor Rapp, 10 tackles. Both guys looked very active in run support. Were never really tested as guys in coverage. So, Andy Dalton was very happy taking those 4, 5, 6, 3-yard gains. And this secondary was never really tested like that. So, some fans are going to get frustrated at that and think, the Bears had a lot of long drives. The Rams couldn't stop them. Every single drive that the Bears had on offense went into the Rams side of the field. And I get that, but it clearly worked. I mean, this was a defense that wanted to keep everything in front, and that's exactly what they did in this game. And you look at a guy like Andy Dalton, he's never going to push that thing deep if you don't force him to, and he's happy to take those short gains, which he consistently did in this game. And that is why the Bears never really got anything going offensively in terms of actual legitimate big plays. Yeah, there was a lot of 3 or 4-yard gains, but that's exactly what the Rams were happy to concede on the defensive side of the ball. And that's probably why they had a lot of success on the defensive side of the ball. And in this game, of course, and we are going to continue to break down the rest of this game as well as the special teams, and then look at the NFC West very quickly before we wrap everything up. You guys, make sure to keep checking back in here at the Locked On Rams podcast. Throughout the rest of the week, we're going to continue to break down this game with in-depth numbers, as well as take you into the next preview for week 2 between the Rams and the Colts. And I want to tell you about one of our sponsors now for this episode. You can get all the entertainment that you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called Direct TV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling receivers, no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part is there is no annual contract, so you can get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with Direct TV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. And of course, you guys have heard me talk about the Built Bar many times on this podcast, and they are another one of our sponsors for this episode. I've tried every bar on the market. Some of them are chalky, some of them are high in calories, some of them are expensive, and some of them just don't taste that good. Well, luckily for you guys, the Built Bar does not have any of these issues. They have so many different flavors, a massive variety that you can choose from and build your own package, of course. Very delicious. They have a bunch of different flavors. They're healthy. They're low in calories, low in sugar. They're high in fiber. They have 19 grams of protein per bar, and they even work for you if you are on the keto diet. You even get a free cooler with your purchase while the supplies last. All you have to do, just go to BuiltBar.com and use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. And if you guys do need any help betting on the NFL this season, which I'm sure some of you guys do, I do as well, you can go check out the new Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. They're 2 of our hosts on this podcast network here at the Locked On Podcast Network. They're going to give you guys all the information you need. All you have to do, check out the Locked On Bets podcast hosted by betonline.ag, wherever you get your podcasts. Now we can dive into the special teams aspect of this game. And there was not much required out of the Rams on this one. You look at Matt Gay, the kicker. He went 2 for 2 in this game, 100% on his kicks. One was a long of 53, 100% on his extra points as well, 4 of 4. And Johnny Hekker, only 1 punt in this game, and it was a 50-yard boomer. Outside of that, nothing really to complain about. Of course, there was the early big return, the very first kick return of the game for the Bears, I believe by Khalil Herbert. Want to say it was maybe 40 to 45, maybe 50 yards, and it did set them up for a quick score there too. That was maybe not the best play in terms of their coverage, their kickoff coverage, but not exactly something you're really going to lose sleep over. They just need to tighten up a little bit there. And for the rest of the game, they had a good performance. So all in all, you can't ask for a better week 1 performance from the Rams, in my opinion. I mean, they had a very good game on the offensive side of the ball. You've seen exactly what you wanted to see from this passing offense. The running game, maybe not as good as you want for 4 quarters, but there's only so much you can do on the offensive side of the ball. And the Rams were very productive passing. So that running game had to take a back seat, which it did. And eventually, when it came to grind down the game time, they did a very good job at actually doing that and creating some running lanes and getting some yardage and getting some first downs and killing some clock. So a good job by those guys. You look at the weapons, very good from those guys as well. Nothing that we didn't expect. A lot of explosive plays, a lot of conversions, a lot of different areas of the field being attacked. Very good by the offense in general. The defense, kind of boring. There wasn't too many splash plays. There was a turnover or two, which was cool. Some fourth down stops as well, which is crucial. But some of those drives were getting a little bit long there. And Andy Dalton's not exactly the best quarterback, and the Bears are not the best offense. So you'd like to see the Rams defense maybe tighten up just a little bit and not have so many extended drives allowed to their opponents. But all in all, you cannot ask for a better performance from the Rams. I think they got out of this game pretty clean in terms of the injury luck. Look like a team that is definitely as good as everyone thinks they are. This is clearly a team that is a threat to win the NFC West. That is a threat to get to the NFC Championship game. And in my opinion, could very well beat the last team standing when it comes to the Super Bowl. But of course, they have to win their division first before they can get there. And I wanted to touch on this week 1 matchup across the board from this division. Pretty damn good. They went 4-0. I mean, you look at the Arizona Cardinals, an absolutely dominating performance. They beat the Tennessee Titans 38-13. Just killed them. I mean, the Titans are a playoff team, and they look like they should be drafting number 1 overall. That is how good the Cardinals played. An impressive performance. I mean, Kyler Murray looked like an MVP-style quarterback there. Chandler Jones coming back from a lost season last year. 5 sacks in this game, 2 forced fumbles. The guy was absolutely possessed. Just a great performance by those guys. The other side of the ball, you look at the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff, of course, and the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers also win that game 41-33 with a weird game. I mean, they were dominating the Lions by upwards of 3 or 4 touchdowns at one point, and the Lions clawed back, no pun intended, at the end of the game there and had a chance to actually tie that game with a final drive where Jared Goff could not get it done. But the Niners, a 40-burger, they look impressive too. Of course, they were playing the Lions, not exactly the barometer of anybody, thinking of a successful football team, but you can only play who's on your schedule, and they got a big win in that game. So another team to look out for. And then the Seahawks playing the Indianapolis Colts, another big win, 28-16. And that is, of course, a dangerous team that the Rams had to duke it out with a lot last year. 3 times they played each other, and they were impressive. I mean, Tyler Lockett scores 2 touchdowns, one of which was a very long one. DK Metcalf, I believe, also scored in that game. And the Colts never really got going. And that is going to be the team that the Rams do play next. And maybe they're a little bit pissed off and ticked off now. Starting off 0-1, Carson Wentz not having the game that you probably want as a first-time debut for your new team. But it's an interesting game between these two teams. The Rams have a new quarterback in Matthew Stafford. Indianapolis Colts have a new quarterback in Carson Wentz. We're going to dive into that obviously later in the week. I don't want to get into it too much right now because we still have so much to talk to and dive into this game between the Rams and the Bears. And I just can't get over this Matthew Stafford performance. I mean, there is not enough words that you can describe how awesome this guy was in this game, from the poise he had in the pocket to the comfort he had in this new offense with his new players, how long he was willing to extend plays. He was scrambling, throwing to guys open, converting third downs, that red zone play that I mentioned, the touchdown to Robert Woods in the back of the end zone there. This is the kind of stuff that the Rams traded for. That's why they traded and mortgaged some of that future, why they got rid of a winning player and a Super Bowl quarterback like Jared Goff, where a lot of people thought they were insane, right? A lot of people said this guy was not an upgrade. The Lions don't win football games. Matthew Stafford can't win football games. He's not a playoff quarterback. This guy's a choke artist. He's just somebody who runs up, fourth quarter statistics, prevent time statistics, that kind of stuff. He's not really worthy of what his box score stats say he is. He can't win, all these different things. And it's only one game. We can't really refute any of those kind of things just yet. But I mean, that stuff was nonsense. It was garbage from the moment we heard it. It's garbage now. This is a football game. This is a team sport. 53 guys it takes to win or lose a football game. And Matthew Stafford never had the foundational structure or infrastructure, I should say, for success in Detroit. That is completely different now in Los Angeles. He already looks like a superstar. He looks like a guy that could win the MVP award. And what I find funny, and I talked about this with some of my buddies over the weekend, You look at all the people that visited the Rams this offseason, right? You look at Peter King. You look at guys like Peter Schrager as well. Some of these guys that went to visit the Rams, the big media members, all of these guys have the Rams winning the Super Bowl. It is no coincidence they have Matthew Stafford winning the MVP award, the Rams winning the Super Bowl, all these different things. That is not a coincidence. They know what they saw there at those practices, what they got from Matthew Stafford, what they got from Sean McVay in terms of talking with these guys, and they're buying into that buzz. And it's not a coincidence. It's not an accident. And I think we started to see a little bit of why there is such great expectations and hype for this team going into this game and into this season. They looked outstanding, and I don't think there's anything more you could ask of this offense. This is exactly what the Rams wanted, an explosive offense. They want to have that LA culture. They want to put butts in seats, and there's no better way to do it than score these 50, 60, 70-yard touchdowns, 2 of which we saw in this first game. Of course, the Rams are going to be a little bit of a mix and match offense. Maybe next week they go to the running game, and the running game has 187 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. That could be a potential thing there. There's nothing really we can hang our hat on. This is going to be a multiple offense that can do a lot of different things, and that's exactly why they're so fun and why they're a team to look out for this season. That is going to basically do it for this Game 1 recap. I think we touched on pretty much all the talking points from this game. Just a tremendous performance from everybody, from the coaching staff to the players to the fans. You guys had SoFi rocking. It sounded like it was a crazy and awesome atmosphere. I'm super happy for all you guys that got to go and witness this awesome new era, the Stafford era. This was a great way to usher it in. Of course, we're going to continue to keep diving into this game with the in-depth numbers tomorrow, as well as when our guy Brad Motter hops on. We're going to get his opinion in this game, and then we'll turn the page going into the Week 2 contest between the Rams and the Colts. Just a reminder, you guys can come connect with us on Twitter at QBsMEP and at Locked On Rams. You can find us on YouTube as well at Locked On Rams. And please subscribe or follow to get our latest episodes, content, breaking news, and a whole lot more.